Imagine a traditional light infantry unit. Foot soldiers literally trekking through waist-deep mud, transforming, seemingly overnight, into a highly lethal mechanized combat force. Well, that is exactly the story of the 34th East Bengal Regiment, better known as the Deadly Tigers. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to track their incredible evolution. We'll go from their chaotic post-liberation roots right up to their current status as an elite, rapid response asset defined by heavy armor and absolutely overwhelming firepower. Let's dive into this. Okay, so every elite unit out there has a creed, right? Something that dictates exactly how they fight. For the 34th East Bengal, operating under the broader East Bengal Regiment, that motto is grace, strength, speed, or historically, Chal Shakti Gati. And honestly, it perfectly matches their mascot, the Royal Bengal Tiger. Because just like that apex predator of the Delta, this unit is trained to move with absolute grace through incredibly complex terrain, strike with overwhelming strength, and maneuver with literal lethal speed. To really understand how this apex predator operates, we've got a clear mission path for this explainer. First, we'll look at the birth of the Tigers. Second, how they earn their stripes globally. Third, we'll dive into the mechanized era. Fourth, we'll break down the actual anatomy of the battalion. And finally, we'll look at day-to-day life as a deadly tiger. All right, part 1. Birth of the Tigers, forging a new vanguard. To really get their creation, we have to look back to the incredibly chaotic post-1971 liberation era of Bangladesh. Let's trace this timeline and see how this builds. The newly formed republic had highly vulnerable borders, and the government urgently needed a new vanguard to secure those sovereign frontiers. So, in January 1977, right amidst the dust of the Rangpur Cantonment, the 34th East Bengal Regiment was officially raised. And from there, it's just a constant climb. By April 2000, their operational excellence actually earned them their regimental color. Fast forward to 2014, and they reached the absolute pinnacle of military honor with a national standard. And then, from 2015 to the present day, they've undergone this massive structural shift into a fully mechanized force. But before all the heavy armor, they were foot soldiers. For their first 2 decades, the Deadly Tigers were a highly disciplined conventional light infantry unit. And their early operations? They were grueling. We are talking about dense, treacherous jungle patrols in the Chittagong hill tracts for counterinsurgency. We're talking about guarding super vulnerable border flashpoints just to deter smuggling and incursions. It was out there, in the mud, in the intense heat, through relentless tactical training and marksmanship, that their ironclad discipline was really forged. And that discipline absolutely caught the world's attention. Moving on to part 2, earning their stripes, global projections. As the 21st century rolled in, their narrative focus shifted dramatically from domestic border security to the world stage. Bangladesh actually emerged as a top troop-contributing country to the United Nations, and the Deadly Tigers packed their gear for Africa. They deployed under the blue UN helmet to some seriously volatile missions: UNMIL in Liberia, UNOCI in Côte d'Ivoire, and MONUSCO in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And what's really amazing here is their dual role. On one hand, they were engaging in intense, incredibly dangerous firefights to disarm militias. But on the exact same deployment, they were displaying incredible empathy, rebuilding broken local communities, securing vital aid convoys, and even establishing field hospitals. All of this intense domestic dedication and international sacrifice culminated on November 12, 2014, in a truly historic, high-profile ceremony at the Shahid Salahuddin Cantonment. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina formally presented the national standard to the 34th East Bengal Regiment. In the Bangladesh Armed Forces, this is literally the highest honor a unit can receive. It essentially enshrined the Deadly Tigers into national military history forever. But as we know, a predator has to evolve to survive. That brings us to Section 3, the mechanized era, evolution of the predator. In the mid-2010s, this unit hit its most significant technical and tactical turning point yet. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer contrast between their past and their present. The old reality? Standard light infantry. Soldiers marching on foot through dense jungles with standard rifles. But their new reality is a total structural overhaul to become a mechanized infantry battalion. I mean, this meant trading walking boots for heavy armored personnel carriers, or APCs. It meant learning to synchronize with heavy armored columns and actually operating highly complex anti-tank guided missiles. It was a grueling transition from standard foot soldiers to a heavy-hitting, rapid response asset. So what triggered this? The catalyst for this massive upgrade was a national mandate known as Forces Goal 2030.
This is the Bangladesh military's sweeping modernization blueprint. Basically, the strategic doctrine shifted entirely towards speed, high mobility, and heavy armor protection. To actually meet this mandate, the Deadly Tigers had to master advanced ballistic defense systems and complex heavy weapons like the Metis-M and PF-98 anti-tank missile systems. They literally became the very embodiment of that new doctrine.
Okay, moving to Section 4, Anatomy of the Battalion, Structure and Tactics. How does a mechanized unit of this caliber actually function on the ground, operating today out of the Rangpur Cantonment under the 66th Infantry Division? Let's take a look. If we break down the structure of this 600 to 800 personnel unit, it's honestly a marvel of organization. Led by a senior lieutenant colonel, the battalion is divided into 7 independent functional departments. This perfectly separates the sword from the shield. You have 4 frontline combat companies doing the actual fighting, 1 heavy support company providing the heavy firepower, and 2 administrative wings, that's logistics and medical, keeping the whole machine running smoothly behind the scenes. Let's look closely at the tactical tip of the spear. First up is Alpha Company, famously known as the Iron Claws. They are the fully mechanized assault spearhead of the entire battalion. Their specific expertise? Deploying directly from those heavy armored personnel carriers straight into high-intensity combat zones. They are built from the ground up for frontal shock and awe. In sharp contrast, you have Bravo Company, known as the Strikers. While Alpha goes straight up the middle, Bravo is specialized in agility and surprise. They are highly trained for rapid flanking maneuvers and even complex amphibious crossings. And when you combine them with Charlie and Delta companies, who handle urban combat and nighttime jungle warfare respectively, they create a highly versatile, incredibly adaptable combat force. But here's the thing. Rifle companies can't do it alone. They absolutely need devastating offensive backing. And that is exactly where the Battalion Support Company comes in. This department handles the overwhelming firepower. We are talking about 81mm and 120mm heavy mortars, automatic grenade launchers, and those heavy anti-tank guided missiles we mentioned earlier. If the rifle companies ever find themselves pinned down, this support company delivers the precision heavy hits needed to absolutely break the enemy. Let's pivot now from the hardware to the human element in our final section. Life as a deadly tiger, uniforms and reality. What is the culture, the compensation, and the actual day-to-day reality of the soldiers inside this elite unit? And this brilliantly illustrates how rich heritage is woven right into the fabric they wear. A Deadly Tiger's uniform is just packed with symbolism. On their beret sits a highly polished silver badge depicting a striking Royal Bengal tiger framed in wreaths. During formal parades, they wear a brilliant scarlet braided lanyard over their right shoulder, a really deep nod to regimental tradition. Even their ceremonial belts feature a heavy brass plate engraved with an aggressive tiger head. Every single detail projects their identity. Of course, bearing that identity comes with immense risk, and their compensation structure definitely reflects that. For the officers at the executive tier, you see perks like comprehensive military hospital coverage and fully maintained transport. The junior commissioned officers receive semi-subsidized family housing and full ration allowances. And for the operational combatants on the ground, they're getting fully funded daily meals, free barracks lodging, and specialized risk allowances for operating those dangerous mechanized bays or manning forward border outposts. But there is also a major financial incentive for their global work. When these soldiers are deployed to overseas danger zones as peacekeepers, they receive what's called a UN premium. This is a highly lucrative financial stipend regulated directly by the United Nations and paid out in US dollars. It significantly supplements their standard domestic pay, rewarding them and their families for the immense danger they face in places like the Congo or Côte d'Ivoire. Now, when they aren't deployed abroad, their permanent home is the Rangpur Cantonment in northern Bangladesh, and it's essentially a self-contained military city. Because they are a fully mechanized unit, the base features heavy-duty hydraulic bays and garages just to service the armored vehicles. They have a dedicated medical inspection room for trauma care, advanced electronic simulation ranges for marksmanship, and to keep morale high, they have inter-company sports pitches. I mean, they train incredibly hard, and they live in a facility built to sustain that exact intensity. The 34th East Bengal Regiment represents a truly fascinating duality. We've traced their evolution from foot soldiers in the mud of the Chittagong Hill tracks to an elite, mechanized rapid response asset armed with anti-tank missiles. Yet these are the exact same soldiers building pontoon bridges for flooded civilians at home and setting up field hospitals in war-torn African nations. So the crucial point is this.
How do modern elite units, like the Deadly Tigers, perfectly balance ultimate, terrifying combat lethality with the deep humanitarian empathy required for global peacekeeping? It's a delicate balance of grace, strength, and speed, and one they've mastered for nearly half a century. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the mechanics of our world.